Alrighty, you guys, a little quick update on the sponges already. After letting some of the leaf cuttings harden off or callus off, I also rearranged some of the cuttings I already had going in some other different places, some in water, some above water, etc. I just kind of did an inventory of all the cuttings I have going on. Well, not all of them, but the ones that were rooting in water or above water that I had going on. And in experimenting with the sponges a bit, I have discovered that I don't like to cut holes in them. I rather like to just kind of cut them and stand up the leaves in between the layer of sponges wedged into a little container. So with this one, I have two wedged side by side here. So you can wedge, as you can see, I've stood up leaves around the edges. I'm going to use this one as an example. So the leaves are just wedged in between, if I can tilt this and show it, in between the edges. So it has this sponge holding some moisture against it, but it's not actually sitting in water. There's a little bit of water. If I tilt it back, you can see there's a little bit of water, but these guys are right above the line there. But just tucking them all in a row like this works better than trying to cut a hole in the sponge, but cutting it makes it more efficient. With this particular container, this one was easy. I just stuck two side by side, and as you can see, put them around and then in between the two, and on the tops here, I just wanted to have these little string of tier ends on the top to see if I could get any rooting out of them just being on top like this. So I coiled them up in between, as you can see. But if they're all leaf cuttings and you don't want the top of anything showing, then just cutting your sponges into however many sections you need. So I just cut these two just went in whole because I don't actually have enough cuttings to need a whole bunch more, but this will make a whole separate row. As you can see, you can put them all in there, and then you could cut your whole sponge again, and then the pieces are just wedged in. So these are a whole separate piece, as you can see, and I'm finding that it works better wedging between two pieces, and they can just push against each other, than cutting here, and then the sponge just kind of hangs open, so to speak. And they're just not real conducive to cutting holes in. And then you have to know how deep, and for every different type of cutting, you have to cut your hole a different depth. And so your sponges are gonna get really beat up and not be able to be reused a lot. And so this is another helpful thing for that, to be able to just reuse, because this way you can just put them, just barely tuck them in or stick them down. If they're a little bit more top heavy, you have complete control over how deep or not deep you want to put them when they're just wedged together like this. So I had some Easter cactus cuttings that were rooting above water for the most part. I'll put a piece of perlite on that. And then they were just getting really shriveled, and so I've had them in water for a few days, but they're looking much happier. And I don't want to just completely leave them in water. I don't want their roots to develop complete water roots, so I'm going to use this sponge and just transport. Oops, this guy's getting roots on the top as well. And so this is basically, you can see, so it's just using the force kind of the sponge itself, of the expansion of the sponge, to wedge your cuttings against the side of the container, or if we do it in the middle here where these cuts are, just against themselves. And these sponges I just hydrated, so there's a bit too much water here. I'm going to drain a little bit of this off. I don't want the water level clear to the top of the sponges, but I wasn't sure how much they were going to absorb. So then I have this crack here too. Let's slip a couple of these guys in. And so far, it's only a few days in. This would be, I think, the third day that I've had some of these guys on. Obviously not the ones I'm just putting on right now. These guys have been in water, but the other tray that I have going here has been on some sponges for a few days. And so far, so good. So far, I'm loving it. And they're not drying out too fast with just water barely in the bottom, especially when they're wedged in tight like this and then they have plant material over them. It's kind of keeping a ton from evaporating off, I think. This one isn't rooting on the bottom stem, so this bottom stem isn't rooting and it's a little bit soft, so I'm gonna cut. It's not rotten or anything yet, but there's roots forming on this second node here. So I'm just gonna cut that and slip this little guy back in there. There's a few of these that didn't really revive, as you can see, and that usually means the bottom just wasn't absorbing or the top had already detached, kind of, which was the case with several of these. This one doesn't have a lot of roots here, but there's good roots growing out of here. And this one's still a little bit shriveled, which that's probably why, because this stem that was in the water wasn't absorbing anything. So I'm just gonna cut that guy off and slip it in here. And when there's already some roots forming in this type of a situation on these type of epiphytes, I don't always wait for them to callus off. If I was putting them into dirt where they were going to get potentially, there we go, potentially be exposed to some bacteria, etc. But these are brand new sponges, and in between uses I'm going to soak these sponges in a peroxide solution just to make sure they're good and clean, but also safe for the plants. And then this is really highly filtered rainwater. It's rainwater, and then we ran it through our Berkey, which is a filtration system that you can use on pond water and then drink it after it goes through. So it's a pretty good filtration system. But it gets all the bacteria and whatnot out of the water, so I'm not worried about it getting infected. And also, if one or two of these stems don't make it, I'm not going to be horribly sad either. I'm going to actually remove this branch. You can hear my son and husband visiting. And this guy just isn't quite able to sustain all three of these branches while rooting, and it's trying to get roots out from this second node. Oh, come on. Whew. Sorry. There we go. And so if this guy is in more direct contact with some moisture, he might actually perk up for us and survive. But if not, that's all right. Anyways, so there you can see what I'm doing, and that's all of the cuttings I have right now, so I didn't go ahead and cut these other sponges up anymore because I didn't really need to, but if I had more, I definitely would, because that's working really well. So I just wanted to show you guys that. And these guys here, let me move back over to this tray that's been going a little bit longer. These guys here, I don't want to pull with the sponge. I'm pulling the sponge kind of away, you can see, and then gently pulling them out. You can see the little roots forming. So far, nobody's attaching to the sponges, but I will keep an eye on them. And we will see how this goes. Alrighty, that's it for today. I will talk to you guys soon, and happy growing!